are the scales lying? Why am I not losing weight? This is a question I get asked all the time. It's got more to do with muscle, fat, bone, and water. Find out why the scales are lying. Are the scales lying? Why am I not losing weight? I bet that is a question that most people ask themselves so many times when they've been busting their ass at the gym or training or whatever you're doing, you're eating healthy, you're doing all the right things, and all of a sudden you jump on those scales and they don't tell you what you want to hear or see. And you're looking at it going, you've got to be kidding me. I've done all this exercise. I've trained every day. I've basically starved myself. I'm not even eating a pea. And you're telling me I haven't lost any weight. Why? Why does that happen? And how frustrating is it? I understand exactly where you're coming from if you've experienced this. And everybody's experienced it. Everybody's experienced it where, you're really trying hard and things aren't working. But let me explain something to you. There's a reason why that happens. And the number one reason is muscle, fat, water. It's that simple. Muscle, fat, water. Muscle weighs a lot more. It's a denser substance. When you put on muscle, when you do weight training and you increase in strength and you increase in muscle, your weight's going to go up. And I know a lot of people get upset that, I'm putting on weight. My clothes don't fit me. Don't worry. It's because you put on muscle. It's not a big deal. Fat can only be burnt in the muscle. So it's like this. It's like saying, well, when you put, petrol in your car, you put petrol in the back of the car, in most cars, and then when you start your engine, petrol goes through the fuel line into the engine, and the engine uses it for energy, and the byproduct is carbon monoxide. Well, in the body, a similar process occurs. You eat something, it converts to fat, it stores in your fat cell. And the fat cells are all over your body, right? When you exercise, you can't spot reduce. But what happens is, let's say you're bike riding for argument's sake. So you're working the muscles of the legs. So the legs are burnt, moving, and the brain is going, I need some fuel. We run out of carbs or we want something more efficient, we need to use fat. So what happens is the fat cell opens up, fat drains out into the bloodstream in the form of what we call free fatty acids, and it transports to the working muscles, being the legs in this case if you're bike riding, and the legs uptake it and use that fat for energy, and off you go. And that's how you fat burn, all right? So this is where are the scales lying is so important, because sometimes people rely so much on those scales as their form of measurement, and it's not an accurate form of measurement. It's the same as driving again, if we use the analogy of driving, and all you're looking at is the speedo to see how fast you're driving, and you don't look at anything else. You don't know how much petrol you got left in your tank, you don't know what your oil gauge is, you don't know what your temperature is, you don't look at your GPS, you don't look at anything. All you're looking at is that speedo that's telling you you're driving 60 k's an hour. All right? If that's all you're looking at, that's the only information you're getting. But what you need to understand is that weight is made up of 4 substances. It's made up of muscle, fat, bone, and water. And obviously the last bit, really, there's 5 things. There's all the other internal bits and pieces in your body. Okay? But the main 4 is muscle, fat, water, and bone. Now, your bones don't really change too much, but with exercise, the density of your bones can increase. So when you start doing weight training, you do increase in bone density. And for anyone that wants to prevent osteoporosis, especially middle-aged to elderly, doing weight-bearing exercise and doing weight training, lifting weights, is highly beneficial. And it has been shown to improve the bone density at any age. Bone density decreases quite rapidly once you pass the age of 40 and then into your 50s and 60s and so on. So it's important to do weight-bearing activity to strengthen the bones to prevent breakages and dislocations and all the rest of it. As well as that, you're strengthening your muscles with weight training. You're strengthening the ligaments and tendons in your body with weight training. So it's very, very important that a weight training routine is established safely. So you're doing the right exercises to help you put on muscle and make the muscle that you have more efficient. As I mentioned, you cannot lose fat without muscle. You just can't do it. It has to be burnt in the muscle. So the more muscle you have and the more efficient your muscles are at burning, the more fat you're going to burn. So that comes back to metabolism. So think about your metabolism like a fire in a fireplace. So if I want to make that fire burn more, what do? I don't put less wood on the fire, I'll put more wood on the fire. So if I put a log on the fire and then I walk away and I come back in a week, what happens to the fire? It dies out. But if I constantly put wood on the fire and I'm continually putting wood, every 2 to 3 hours I'm putting wood on that fire is going to keep burning and it'll burn forever as long as I keep feeding the fire. Well, 1 kilo of muscle requires 77 to 100 calories just to be there. Just to be there. So it's a highly absorbable calorie substance or tissue, as opposed to fat only requires 30 calories just to be there because it hasn't got a big blood supply. So the body works harder and more efficiently with muscle than it does with fat. Fat is there for survival, right? So fat will give you more energy longer, but it's not as dense as a substance. So muscle weighs roughly three times more than fat. So when you weigh yourself, if you put on muscle, and without losing any fat, and without losing any water, and without your bone density changing, your weight will actually go up initially. But then having that extra muscle helps you burn more fat. Therefore, eventually, what will happen is the muscle, being the metabolism burning, because as the fire grows and grows and grows, you're able to then burn more calories a lot faster and a lot more efficiently. You're able to burn more fat. So then what happens is your weight starts to drop again. And it's not because you've lost muscle, it's because you're now burning fat. So if you put on 1 kilo of muscle and you lose 3 kilos of fat, on the scales, you're exactly the same weight, assuming you haven't lost any water or bone. So just let's eliminate the water and the bone for a minute, and let's just talk about fat and muscle for a second. That's how that process works. Your weight is exactly the same on the scales. So this is where a lot of people give up on their training program and their routine, because initially when you first start exercising, your weight will sometimes go up. So what generally happens is this: you start a program, you start eating really healthy, and you diet and whatnot. And all of a sudden, you lose a lot of water. So the first few days and maybe sometimes up to a week, you lose weight very, very quickly. A lot of it's water weight. It's excess fluid in the body, and the body's just trying to flush out all the toxins, and it's getting rid of all this excess water. You're drinking more water because you're exercising, you're sweating, you're drinking more water, flushing it all out, the natural levels of water decrease. Now there's another part there. If you don't drink enough water, and this is where the weight can actually change again. So let's just talk about water for a second, then we'll come back to the fat and the muscle. With water, if you're dehydrated, and you'll know that you're dehydrated when you get thirsty all the time or you get headaches, 90% of headaches are due to dehydration. So the fastest way to prevent a headache is just have a drink of water. So you know when people say, oh, I've got a headache, I better take some aspirin or whatever. All that's doing, aspirin is a vasodilator, which basically means that it opens up your blood vessels to allow fluid to come in. A headache is a swelling of your brain, and that's due to lack of fluid because your brain's 90% water. So if you don't drink enough water, you can't concentrate, you feel very lethargic, and you start getting a headache. And that's because the brain is swelling and the inside of the brain is pressing against, the brain is pressing against the inside of the skull. And it's causing pressure, and then you get a headache. If you just drink more water, the brain rehydrates and the swelling actually decreases, and what you'll find is the headache will go away. Sometimes you need to massage your temple. You need to take some breaths because sometimes you're under a lot of stress. You might have tension. But 90% of headaches are due to dehydration. So before you grab the pills or whatever, the best thing you can do when you get a headache is drink a tall glass of water or two. Next time you go to the toilet, have a look at your urine. Now, if it's a really dark yellow color, that's a sign of dehydration. It needs to be a very pale yellow, very, very pale, right? When it's a very pale yellow, it means your body is hydrated. So if you've got a headache and you go to the toilet and it's coming out really like gold, that's a sign that you're dehydrated. Keep drinking water and you'll find that your body will rehydrate itself. The next time you go to the toilet, the water, the urine will come a more pale color. So that's how you can rehydrate yourself, eliminate headaches and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you don't drink enough water, what your body does, it's very, very smart. It holds on to fluid because it's scared you're going to dehydrate. So you need to drink 2 liters of water a day, regardless of the day. 2 liters. Now, if you exercise, you've probably got to add another liter. If it's a humid day and you're sweating a lot, you've probably got to add another liter. So you can see now all of a sudden how quickly the body can become dehydrated. If you take diuretics or you drink substances that have got diuretic properties like caffeine and things like that draw water out of your body. For example, for every cup of coffee or tea that's got caffeine or a caffeinated drink, you need to drink another glass of water to replace the lost fluid. So for every cup, you need to drink 250 mils of water to replace the fluid. So for example, if you have 4 cups of coffee a day, or tea or whatever it is that's caffeinated, you need to drink another liter just to replace the lost caffeine or lost fluid from the caffeine. So people don't realize this, and then they wonder, well, why do I feel so tired all the time? Maybe I need a coffee. And you always get that mid-afternoon slump, mid-morning, mid-afternoon slump. And what you're doing is you're making it worse. If you just go for a walk around the block, get some oxygen into your body, you'll find you'll feel a lot better just from the energy of circulating your blood. Drink a tall glass of water, you'll probably feel $1 million without the coffee or tea or whatever that caffeinated drink is. Some people have caffeinated and sugary soft drinks and stimulants and things like that. So the body is like a reservoir. It holds a certain amount of water standard. So if you don't drink enough, that 2 liters a day, the natural levels start to drop. And if the natural levels start to drop too far and the brain senses, oh, there's not enough water in the system, it sets off the thirst mechanism. You start drinking, you feel thirsty, you start drinking water, and you generally tend to drink more water than what body needs. And so the natural levels sit up at even higher. So then what the brain says is, look, gee, we don't know when you're going to drink again. So let's just make the levels a little bit higher. And that's how it retains more fluid. Now, the other dilemma is salt and carbohydrates or sugar. For every gram of salt that you consume, your body will hold 5 grams of water. Ever had a bag of chips and they've been salty or whatever, and you had anything salty for that matter, doesn't have to just be chips, it could be anything that's salty, and all of a sudden you just got to drink a liter of water because you're so thirsty, and then afterwards you feel bloated? That's because of the salt. The body has to eliminate that salt because the salt dries out the cells, so it tries to push all the salt out. Now sure, salt can prevent cramping if you suffer from muscle cramps, but in general, if you're suffering from muscle cramps, all you need to do is increase your magnesium levels to stop the cramping. Or what some people get is restless legs when they're sleeping. So if you get cramping quite often, if you find that when you're exercising, you're sweating a lot and you're losing a lot of electrolytes, you need to increase your magnesium levels rather than your salt or electrolyte levels. And you've got to also look at your potassium levels as well. Your sodium, potassium. Sodium is salt and potassium levels in and out of the cell. That just allows water or fluid to pass in and out of a cell. So you've got to be aware of these things because that can fluctuate fluid in and out of your body. You can lose 2 kilos a day just from fluid going in and out of your body. So if you stop eating, right? So let's say you fast and you're not drinking enough water, the body needs fluid. So it'll just draw it from the cells and it dehydrates you, it then draws it from the brain. And then all of a sudden you go to the toilet and the color of your urine is very dark. That's a sign of dehydration. You need to drink more water. So that's the water thing. The opposite effect occurs. When you start drinking more and more water, the brain goes, wow, why am I drinking all this? Why are we retaining all this fluid when Tony's drinking so much water and he has to go to the toilet all the time, and you start eliminating all this fluid? Naturally, the levels start decreasing and the body holds less fluid the body holds less fluid. Now, water sits underneath your skin. So you've got your bone, then you've got your muscle with all the blood vessels going through it, and then you've got your fat, and then you've got your water levels just underneath that, and your skin. So if your skin is very dry, that's another sign that you're dehydrated. If your elbows are very dry, if your heels and feet are very dry, that's a sign of too much salt in your diet and not enough fluid in your diet. So have a look at that, because that can cause you to retain fluid and get bloated all the time. So if you suffer from bloating, maybe you've got too much salt in your diet and too much sugar in your diet. 1 gram of sugar retains 3 grams of water. So again, when you have a high carb meal, high starch meal, your body's going to retain fluid. It's going to bloat. So we always say, never get to a meal hungry. Never leave a meal full. Watch your portion sizes so you don't get bloated. So if you get bloated, that's a sign of poor digestion, or whatever you ate didn't agree with you. So you need to change what you ate. So some people cannot digest starchy carbohydrates. Some people cannot digest, are lactose intolerant, wheat intolerant, gluten intolerant. You need to be aware of what's going on with your body so that you can understand the digestive processes and how you're feeling. If you're getting very mucousy, if you're getting very, you're developing a lot of mucus and you're blowing your nose a lot, that's a sign of lactose intolerance. If you got a lot of gas and wind, that's a sign of poor digestion. It means that the bacteria in your digestive system is not breaking down the food correctly, and you're producing a lot of ammonia, which is gas. So you're farting all the time. These are signs of poor digestion. Now, we're not talking about digestion today. We'll do that in another episode of our Look Good, Feel Great podcast and YouTube. But I just want to highlight these facts to you, because all of these things can cause your weight to increase unnecessarily. So you can see how, when you're looking at those scales, how they can lie. Because it's like, well, I'm doing all the right things. Why is it not showing what I want it to show? Why am I not losing weight? Right? So that covers the water and salt and all the rest of the sugar and all the rest of the stuff. Let's get back to muscle and fat for a minute. So you start a training routine. Your muscles are made up of 72% water. When you're exercising, your muscles are increasing in size. So the definition of strength is the cross-sectional area of a muscle. So the larger the cross-sectional area of a muscle, the stronger you'll get, based on the definition on Google, or if you're as old as me, in the dictionary. So if you get stronger, you're going to be putting on muscle, because you cannot get stronger without putting on muscle. So if you're putting on muscle, naturally your body's going to uptake more water because you've got a larger volume. And also your circulatory system will expand, so you'll develop more capillaries and so on to transport more oxygen and more fat and more energy to those working muscles. And they become, the tendons and ligaments get thicker and get stronger, the density of your bones gets stronger, and naturally your weight goes up. Part of that means you can burn more fat. So as long as you're monitoring what type of food you're eating, so you're not eating foods that convert to fat, so you're eating lower starch foods and lower carbohydrate foods, and you're eating more protein dense foods, you should be putting on more muscle. You can't put on muscle without having protein. Protein is the fuel source for muscle. So you add more protein to your diet, you're putting on more muscle, you're decreasing your carbohydrate levels to a sustainable level, not too low, but a sustainable level. And you'll find that naturally the muscles will start burning that fat. And that's what I mentioned before about the metabolism. The muscles become more efficient. They start getting stronger. And you know what I'm talking about if you've exercised before. You start lifting a weight, you start doing the weights, all of a sudden what you did a couple of weeks ago for say 10 reps gets a lot easier. So if you stay with that, that's a sign that the muscles are getting more efficient. So you've got one or two choices. You can either do more repetitions to get more definition, or you can actually lift more weight to make the muscle bigger. Now, I know what's happening now. A lot of you, especially some of the females that watch this channel and listen to us on our Look Good, Feel Great podcast are saying, yeah, but I don't want big muscles. Trust me, you will not get big muscles. You cannot get big muscles. In the 30 years that I've been a trainer, and I've trained thousands and thousands and thousands of people, I've yet to have a female come to me and say, oh, my muscles are getting too big. And as soon as that happens, remember, 1 kilo of muscle losing 3 kilos of fat causes your weight to be the same. But muscle takes up 5 times less space than the same amount of fat. So in actual fact, you actually get smaller in size by putting on muscle, because once it starts burning that fat takes up more space, it starts reducing size. Now, you know what I mean. Have you ever spoken to a friend and you found out how much they weigh and you go, oh, what do you weigh? Oh, I weigh 60 kilos. Well, that's funny. I weigh 60 kilos. How come you look like that and I look like this? And let's say you're larger than your friend who weighs exactly the same weight as you. How can that be? Because he or she has more muscle and less fat than you may have. You may have more fat and less muscle. So your body's taken up more space, which means it's going to be bigger. Now, here's the thing. For every kilo of fat, the heart needs to pump an extra 4 kilometers of blood to that fat cell. So to that kilo of fat. So the heart pumps to its extremity. So the bigger you are in fat, the harder your heart has to work. Therefore, when you're a lot larger, your heart rate has to increase, and that's what then causes, eventual heart disease and strokes and atherosclerosis and heart attacks and the whole lot. So you can see it's so important not to worry about those scales, but to worry about how you feel and how you look in your clothes, right? They're a better gauge. If you want something more specific, I highly, highly, highly recommend, especially if you live in Adelaide, come and see us at our Better Than Ever studios. We do a very, very detailed body analysis. Very detailed body analysis. The machine that we use will actually tell us exactly how much fat, muscle, bone, and water you have. It is so critical that we know exactly what your body's made up of so that you don't ever have to worry about the scales. We don't care about the scales. Every single Better Than Ever family member that comes and joins our family, day 1, session 1, we do a body analysis and we work out exactly what your Better Than Ever goal is based on the report that our analyzing machine tells us. And if you need that sort of information, then you need to come and see us. If you're not in Adelaide, then I'm sure you can Google where people can use these machines. And if you need to reach out to us to find out what we do, let us know and we can let you give you the information, further information if you need. And like we always say, here's a little plug for us. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel, or if you're on our podcast, give us a 5-star review if you like what I'm telling you, and share this link. Turn on your notifications on our YouTube channel and share this link to all your family and friends and people that you know, because the more people that we can get this message out to, the more people we can help. Remember, our goal is to help change the world by making the world a healthier place, by helping people look good, feel great. That's why we called the podcast and the YouTube channel Look Good, Feel Great, because that's exactly what we want you to feel like. So don't worry about the scales. The scales don't matter. You don't walk around with a stamp on your head telling everyone how much you weigh. So who cares what you weigh? It really doesn't matter. What's important is how you feel. How do you feel? If you're feeling energized and you're feeling great and you're feeling toned, then you're doing the right thing. If you're not, then we need to change something. As we always say, results start here. Everybody deserves to be better than ever.